Hi, everyone. My name is Florence. You may have seen me at the roundtable earlier. At Google, in the Consumer Insights team, we have amazing data at our disposal to analyze the everyday consumer. Today, I will present to you one of my favorite insights pieces, built in conjunction with BETC, a partner advertising agency. And with them, in a world often obsessed with more, we dare to ask, can austerity actually be a source of happiness? To answer our question, we have two sources of data. First, BETC surveyed 1,500 consumers in France, among which a couple hundred of what they call prosumers. Prosumers are forward-looking consumers that are indicative of the trends to come. Generally, when prosumers adopt a mindset, it generalizes into the mainstream population within a year. So that's why for each survey question, you will see two numbers as an output, where the prosumers stand and where the current general opinion is. So if I were you, I would look at the prosumer data for a hint on where we're heading. So what these prosumers say is interesting, but on a topic like sustainability, what they actually do is even more surprising. And that's why we confronted that data to another source, full of surprises: the Google searches of over 54 million internet users in France. By doing this, we combine the declarative data of the surveys with the intention data from the searches. And we can really delve into the complexity of our beloved population, and you'll see they're often full of contradictions. And if today is not enough for you and you want to do your own analysis, remember that on googletrends.com, we offer a free and easy access to a representative data set and sample of search data worldwide. So please go to Google Trends. Okay, back to our topic. Can austerity, frugality be happy? Well, in France, it's already a well-known concept. And at first sight, the French seem widely convinced that austerity, frugality can be happy. Indeed, 80% of them say they could be happy in a more sober, more frugal world. Frugality is seen as forward-looking. It's a type of progress. It's not a return to the medieval times. And what's more, a large share of the population believes that the citizens themselves are the ones directly responsible for climate change, and they carry the responsibility to act upon it. Many of them even seem to have changed some essential behaviors to act on their carbon footprint. Almost half say they avoid taking the plane, and a lot of them also say they reduce or limit their meat consumption. So is frugality already here? Has sobriety already won? Is my presentation already over? Not really. And that is where the Google data comes in. And it really helps highlight the gap between what people say they do when they're asked and what they actually do. And that is what we call the say-do gap. So let's take meat consumption, for instance. Let's look at how people search for recipes online. We just said that a lot of them think they're reducing their consumption. But overall, in France, there are still 4 times more searches for recipes with the word beef in them than searches for recipes with the semantics of veganism or vegetarianism in them. Of course, if I add in all types of meat, we have over 20 times more searches for meat-related recipes than for vegetarian ones. And at this point, you could tell me, okay, but vegetarianism is a trend on the rise. Those searches are probably trending and rising fast. Well, not really. For recipes, for instance, searches for vegetarian recipes are actually going down, while meat ones are still rising every year. But on a positive note, each year during festive season, we do see interest peak for vegetarian recipes. And to me, it's the proof that when people get together, they try to adapt to new diets in new ways. They're more curious about what others might eat, and they really want to please their guests. So that's the perfect time to share your new behaviors. This type of say-do gap can be found in all the sectors. Another example here in France with the retail sector. In France, surveys often show a rising interest for locally sourced or made in France products. And the searches made in France is not really trending. Fast fashion brands are still getting the lion's share. But we don't want to be too pessimistic today. So rest assured that we also see some new positive consumption behaviors come up, typically like the ones around secondhand. So what the say-do gap tells us is that consumers will be consumers, but shifting behaviors is really tough. And actually, they already know and feel that changing consumption is hard. It requires effort, especially Gen Z. They say that they're having a hard time not wanting everything that they see online or in store. And when we ask them a little further, what could push them to durably change their habits and become more frugal? Well, for most of them, it will only happen under economical strain. So it still shows that there's a strong perception of frugality and sobriety as a hardship. And we started off saying that sobriety, frugality can be happy, but actually when we kind of dig a little further, it still sounds like something you do only when you're forced to. So they're not really ready to stop consuming, but they might be ready to start making better consumption choices. At least half of them really feel like they could. Okay, back to Google data. To understand how consumers make these consumption choices and how economical reasons play a role in them, I love to look at how internet users search for the word price online. I'm going to pause here. These consumption choices, and especially under economical strain, I love to look at how internet users search for the word price. We see the word price is always trending in the searches. And to me, it shows, first of all, that consumers feel like prices are really fluctuating all the time, that they can find the same item at various prices online. And so by searching online, trying to compare, trying to find the right discount, they're actually acting on the price tag very proactively. And they're taking part into how much an item will have them spend. We can also go into more detail, and you can do that on Google Trends. Check out like how the word price is trending in different spend categories. And that way you will actually see where consumers are currently trying to spend more, splurge, or save money. And it can show you how they're kind of distributing their money right now. Beyond the searches around prices, I could talk about them for hours. We also see a willingness in France to improve basic financial literacy at a personal level. We see trending searches around budgeting tools or just questions around the basics of finance. And I also love what's happening on YouTube with new accessible content, smart social media trends, sometimes even launched by the financial companies themselves to help people grasp the most important rules about finance. An example is cash stuffing, where they're just teaching you a simple way to save money and budget your money. Another one would be no-buy challenges that are also helping you reboot the way you spend your money. And I find funny that in France, we see the same interest in terms of volume of searches for financial planning as for yoga classes. And it's the same on YouTube. So I'm sure both can improve your well-being a lot. You probably have to do both to feel very good. So looks like our internet goers are all equipped to make more sustainable decisions moving forward and better spend decisions. But this takes us to our second gap, the believe true gap. The gap between what people think have an impact on their carbon footprint and what actually has an impact. And this time, we'll start with Google data. We see rising interest for recycling, and that's great. But when we look at how the French are actually searching for recycling, we can see that they're really focused on recycling things that aren't the ones with most impact. There are many searches around recycling little objects like bottle caps or pens or yogurt pots, but very few around how to recycle electronic devices, for instance. So probably still a lack of knowledge of where the actual impact is. We also see some trending products that might sound super virtuous at first sight, like tote bags or reusable water bottles. And these have become symbols of a more sustainable lifestyle. It's a good start, but the sheer scale of the searches for these products really makes me wonder if users are aware that to actually be neutral, these items need to be used hundreds of times. And you can't have 1,000 tote bags at home, and you can't have 1,000 reusable water bottles. And that will probably not be very positive in terms of impact. So they're interested in them. Is it because they aspire to a profoundly a more frugal lifestyle, or because they want to look like they do? Well, this takes us to my favorite stat of the presentation. When asked, a lot of the surveyed populations said that they feel like they're doing more efforts than the average. 80% of us feel that we try harder than the average. But how would that be possible from a mathematical standpoint? Well, it isn't. So it's the proof that it will work only if we are all in this together, and if we do it not only to show others how sustainable we are, but showing others is probably also part of the solution. And that's why we'll be talking about communication techniques further on. So how can we give the desire not to want when we're so used to the opposite? We'll have to write together new stories of desirability. Helping others not want is actually not stopping to communicate altogether. People admire these influencers that in some ways de-influence others to consuming so much. So helping others not want as companies and as marketers sounds kind of counterintuitive, but actually we can, in many ways, put our usual toolboxes to work, just in with a different message. All consumers, almost all of them, say that they are expecting from companies a nudge in the direction of a more sober future. Third and last gap that we want to explore today, the semantics gap. Because analyzing search queries is all about semantics, and the words at Google are very important. We're passionate linguists. So let's look at the words that companies use to talk about sustainability. Here's a word cloud of the top used words by 4 big French corporations on their websites when they talk about their sustainable commitments. You can see that they're very conceptual. They're like dates in the future, targets, big ideas, and they're very different. They contrast a lot with how internet users think and write about sustainability. So, of course, when internet users write and think about sustainability, they do so at a much more personal level. And so they will use much more relatable words like everyday actions. But it seems that there's kind of a mismatch in terms of communication. And maybe to be more relevant, companies need to use a simpler, more authentic vocabulary that makes make their commitments understandable by everyone and more relatable. So the solution maybe lies in matching those vocabularies, but we can also imagine that we can invite new words that will speak to both worlds. And some have already popped up here and there in advertising. And I feel like the words pre-loved, pre-owned, second life really connect kind of the upsides of consuming more sustainable products and still trigger desirability, still leverage those communication cues that we know work very well. To conclude, consumers will be consumers. And even if in France, they're already convinced that a more frugal lifestyle can be happy and they're ready to make impactful changes, well, they're not totally impervious to the temptations of consumption. And even when they search for sustainable goods, they will have the same level of expectations than they usually do. So here's a few last searches that I really like. As an example, we often see people search for thrift store, but open near me now, or a reusable cup, but it has to be personalized and it has to be delivered within a day. So you can really see how deeply contradictory we still are. So our challenge as a company, as a marketer, lies in the ability that we will have to leverage maybe the same tools and tricks, but to shift desire and attention to the options that will benefit all of us. So economically, we will need new numbers and KPIs to steer away from a pure profit mindset. And emotionally, we will also need new words to write new stories and make these futures really desirable. And this leaves us with a final gap, the no-do gap, because now you know all of this. What are you going to do to participate in creating these new numbers and these new words? Thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope I will see you again soon on Google Trends.